The Diablo 4 Season 4 campfire chat was a couple of days ago, so I fired up D4 to kind of reorient myself and get a better grasp on how I think most of these changes are going to actually impact the game, and I'm feeling pretty optimistic that if these change sets kind of are implemented as they're spelled out in the campfire chat, that this may fix two of Diablo's biggest problems. Let's jump in. We've got the Wowhead campfire chat summary pulled up here. We'll just kind of use as a reference. I'll have a link in the video description if you guys want to follow along a little bit, but it does a pretty good job of summarizing this like 2-hour long campfire chat, kind of going over some of the highlights, but we'll try to do the same here. Let's start with the Codex of Power changes, because I think that these are probably going to be the most impactful in terms of relating to the current experience. So if you've played a lot of D4, you kind of know that right now, when you have a build in mind, you have this list of affixes that you're kind of looking for, and then as you pick up gear, you're like going through it all and trying to determine if they're good rolls on the affixes you're looking for, and it just makes gearing super monotonous. I don't know if people complain about this a lot, but I feel like this is just like a very poorly implemented system, especially without loot filters or anything. It just didn't feel good. And I think that this change is going to overhaul that, because on its surface, it's like, okay, well, all aspects are now in the Codex of Power, sounds great, and they can be upgraded to reach their maximum potential, so you can always have a best roll in the Codex of Power. But I like effectively, because now that we'll have that, as long as you can get that upgraded, that should totally remove the need to just like look at every piece of gear. When you are first upgrading your affixes in the Codex of Power, it could even feel kind of monotonous, but in the demo they gave, I'll put a screenshot of this up on screen, there's actually a little icon that appears on the item that tells you that it is a higher roll on a legendary affix than you have in the Codex of Power currently, so it should make it really easy for you to just go through, look at all the ones with the icons, especially if you anticipate playing the game a lot, and as long as you're not going to use that item in the short term, it's like, oh well, that's an affix upgrade, always salvage it. That brings us to another really nice quality of life improvement that they mentioned, is in that you will no longer have to go to the occultist to extract those legendary affixes. Instead, when you salvage them, they'll just go and upgrade the affix roll in your Codex of Power. So I think this will be huge. Like, this is going to be super impactful, especially when combined with the greater affix system, which is also being added. I think this is the change that I'm actually the second most excited for, even though they didn't spend a lot of time covering it. What this is going to do is make it so that there are certain affixes that can kind of proc, and you'll get a really good roll, 1.5 times the normal roll of that affix. So the example in the picture here is like an intelligence roll, and it's, you know, a 1.5x multiplier. And they can be like 1 or 2 of them, maybe even 3. I'm not sure, but it sounded like there could be, that can drop on an item. So I think what this is going to do is make just like playing the game and looking for drops feel way better. And I think this combined with the Codex of Power change is going to do a couple of things. Again, like the overall just monotony of playing the game and trying to figure out the path to make good items will just be much more streamlined, and you'll know when you get an item that is powerful and useful for your build at a glance much more easily. Especially if you're like, okay, I've got my pretty good everything but my gloves, I'm waiting for my, you know, best in slot roll on my gloves. Right now, as it stands, you kind of are in that mode, and it's not really a satisfying grind, because you have to look through all these items, like all these junk items to find the ones that you might care about, especially when you've been playing a character for a while. But now, with this in place, it will be in a world where it's like, okay, well, I've got a pretty good set of gloves. I'm only looking for gloves now where I have at least one legendary affix that is the one I'm looking, or I have at least one greater affix rather, that is the one I want. Then once you get that one, you start looking for the 2, and it'll just naturally narrow down the amount of junk gear that we have to kind of pick up and look for over time, because once you feel you've got a pretty good base of legendary items, it's like, well, I've got my affixes all done, they're all in the Codex of Power due to the previous change. Now I can just look for my best in slots. I'm looking for the 1 and 2 greater affix drops. So I think it'll kind of give you a natural filter to just make that monotony like pared way down. And I think I think that this is a lot of the thing that makes D4 feel bad for a lot of people, is the gameplay feels great. At least I think it does. I think most of the classes feel super good to play. They're quick, like blasting is satisfying. But the itemization is, when people say the itemization doesn't feel good, I think this is at least half of the problem, if not more. There's some other stuff with endgame and like, you know, specific target farming that they've been working on in previous patches, which I think have improved that quite a bit, and there's more coming in this patch. But I think that this change to itemization is going to be pretty fundamental if it feels like it kind of looks like it should play. I'm pretty optimistic about this one. Let's go over a couple more changes quick. The next one I want to talk about is the tempering system, which is right here. So essentially they've kind of overhauled how all of crafting is going to work. They've replaced it with tempering and masterworking. So what tempering is, it's a new way to put affixes on items. Rare and legendary items are going to drop with 1 or 2 fewer affixes, and then tempering slots. What the tempering slots will let you do is take a tempering manual, and these are like items that drop, and then you use the item to unlock it, at least as far as I can tell, just based on the item descriptions that they had pulled up in the chat. I don't think you'll need to like farm these. I think once you get them once, you will then be able to use that manual. What each manual then has are these 4 affixes, and you'll take that recipe and use it to craft and fill a slot, one of the missing slots in these rare items, to put an affix on them. You know, you get a little more control over your items, and then as you temper them, you kind of tune them to do what you want them to do a little bit more. And then items will also have a durability that'll deteriorate as you kind of roll and try to get the best roll. And if it doesn't work out, you can then reset the item and re-roll it, which is an interesting decision. We'll see how that feels. I mean, it's always nice when items don't get bricked, but it might not feel great if you're used to like slightly more, you know, hardcore ARPGs where you kind of have to hope for a good roll. And that, you know, kind of brings us to an interesting point in that a lot of these systems feel very akin to PoE, and specifically Last Epoch. Like, it feels like they're taking a page right out of the Last Epoch book on these tempering changes and the greater affix rolls we just talked about. Which is like good to see. I think Blizzard's always done a pretty good job of taking things that worked well in other games and kind of folding them in and making them jive. Hopefully it works here. Again, I'm feeling optimistic, but let's jump back in. One more tool in your new crafting belt, which is the Masterwork system. Yeah, right here. So essentially, it's like the core upgrading system. Historically, there was always like the 5 tiers you could upgrade an item, and they just kind of bumped up all the affixes. This largely works the same way, but every 4 ranks there is one of the affixes on the item will be like, it'll proc and you'll get a huge bump on that item. And that's random and non-deterministic, and it seems that this will be the same thing, as you'll kind of go through this system trying to get this to give you the optimal rolls. Like, you want, you know, a given affix, like plus main stat or something, to proc 3 of the 4 times, or 2 of the 3 times, however many it is, to get like an optimal roll on that item. And as you go through it, if it doesn't do it, you can reset the craft and go through it again. I think this will be a great material sync. I think it'll feel more meaningful, hopefully, than the current upgrade system. But it's kind of that same dilemma of like, should items be able to be re-rolled like this? I think because there are 2 systems, it would be pretty gnarly if they couldn't be. It'd feel really tricky to get like optimal rolls on both, and you'd have to determine how much risk you want to take in getting the right item, which I think an argument could be made for, but I don't think that this is a terrible path. Other than that, there's a bunch of like class changes and stuff in here, but not quite as fundamental, I would argue, to the game. There's a new Stygian stone system that'll give us materials for these Masterworking, the new crafting system, which I'm excited about, and is a great name for material in a hellishly themed ARPG. Oh, also tomorrow, there is a graphic patch, like March 26th, the day after this video goes up, where we'll get some Raytracing support and stuff like that. So if you're one of the people that likes to always have the latest and greatest, maybe make sure your graphics card drivers are updated. But that's just a quick little update for tomorrow. That's all I got for now. I'm kind of feeling more optimistic about D4 than I have in a while. I've always been a bit of an apologist, but I'm excited to see how this feels, at least. If it's not great, you know, won't be any worse than it is now, so that's where I'm sitting. Hopefully it's good. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any thoughts, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to kind of get a pulse for how the community's feeling here. But yeah, if you got anything you want to share, hop in the Discord. You can try to catch me live on Twitch. I'll have links to both in the video description. Thank you again. Take it easy.